Welcome to another episode of Ali Live. We're back at Luxury Escapes HQ here in South Melbourne, and today's a very special Singapore episode, and we're talking all things Singapore. And I'm joined by some really special guests today. We have Paul, who works here at Luxury Escapes. Hi Paul,
everyone.
Thank you for joining us. We have Sandra Lam and we have John Consensio, both from the Singapore Tourism Board.
Sharon,
sorry, did I say Sandra? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Welcome, thank you for joining us at Luxury Escapes. Now, today, like I said, we're talking all things Singapore, and it's a very special episode because we've got some great guests with us. So please send through your questions on Singapore, send through any comments that you may have on travelling to Singapore, and hopefully we can answer them for you. And Paul, I believe we've got a competition again today.
We do, Sonia. We have a great competition today. Now, in the next half hour, we're going to, hopefully you guys can respond to this, but what we need to know is how many Australian cities can you fly direct into Singapore? And it's a tricky one, but if you can respond, you can win one of 5 $100 vouchers off your next Luxury Escapes holiday. And if you're in Melbourne, slip into our pop-up store at 261 Little Collins Street in the city, and you can pick up your voucher there. For those outside that area, we'll respond back to you via Facebook. So yeah, great prize, and enter as many times as you like. No hints.
No, no hints. It's under 20 though, right?
It's somewhere between 1 and 20.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, like I mentioned earlier, we've got some special guests. Now, John, you've come all the way from Singapore to join us.
Yep.
Now, tell me a little bit about your role at Singapore Tourism and why you're here in Australia at the moment.
Okay, so I basically play a marketing role in the Singapore Tourism Board, regional director for Oceania. It's good to work for a tourism organisation because you get to travel a lot.
Yes.
I come down regularly to Australia to meet with the travel trade, to meet with some of the consumers also, to try and understand what they're looking for in a destination, and also to tell them about Singapore as a destination.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And it's a great destination to represent.
It is.
It really is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you get to, as part of your job, do you get to travel to Singapore often?
Oh yeah, I do. So
Yeah.
I'm based in Sydney for the past 4 years, and it's been great. Australia, you're wonderful. And also the being able to travel back to Singapore to see what's new every quarter, that really helps.
Wonderful.
And also to tuck in my favorite Singapore street food.
Yeah. Now, you were mentioning earlier about this, the Singapore street food. Now, when I travel, I must admit, I base all my travels around my meal times. So I work out where I'm going to eat, and then I base my travel experiences around that.
Yeah.
And Singapore's always been such a mecca for food.
Yeah.
But you were talking about some secret food destinations.
So my favorite tip to every Australian that I meet is that there is a stretch of road in our CBD called Boon Tat Street, and in the daytime it is a busy street full of cars, and by 7 p.m. every day, between 7 p.m. and 2 a.m. that road gets closed, and then the tables and chairs come out, and then that's where you get the satay stalls, and then you get fresh and very authentic Singaporean local food.
Wow.
And you can just order a pint and a big, many pints of beer and wash it down under the sky. So it's
Sounds
a really
amazing.
nice secret that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah. So I must tell you something about Sharon. When Sharon comes back from meetings, right, she'll pack a plastic bag of noodles, her favorite fishball noodles, and at the meeting she'll open it and she'll eat it from the plastic bag, right, during meetings.
Definitely.
I can sort of relate to that, John. When I go to Singapore, and you know, food is obviously one of the great things to eat in Singapore. But that street, you're sort of walking around looking for something, and this just opens up in front of you, and there's such a choice and range of food.
Right.
You know, the chili crab, all this sort of stuff, which is one of my favourites.
And reasonably priced.
A great
Very
pricing,
reasonable.
You know, and maybe on price we should probably bring that up. That there is, some perception that Singapore can be a little expensive, but I think if you get out, and as you well know, to some of these areas, it's great value.
Yeah. So I guess the issue is that there's a range of offerings, especially with regard to food. You can go to Michelin-starred restaurants, right? They're mid-range restaurants, and there are, of course, the street food, which is very, very reasonable. It's about $5 for a full meal, inclusive of drinks also.
And in fact, Singapore has the cheapest Michelin-starred dish in the world. That's $2.
Really?
And it's chicken rice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
But just on that, I guess talking about the range of food options where you've got your street food and Michelin star, I guess Singapore as a whole is like that. There's so much range of different cultures and different layers. And one of the things I always thought of Singapore was that it was a great stopover city on the way to somewhere else. But really, it's kind of opened up now, and it's so much more of a destination in itself, isn't it?
Yes.
And I guess that's the message that you guys are trying to get across with your tourism board, is that it actually is a holiday destination.
Right. So I think Sharon, being in Sydney in Australia for 4 years, she's done a lot, and the Singapore Tourism Board has done a lot to promote Singapore as a destination in itself. I think we've succeeded quite well because 4 years ago, I think there was only about 15% of Aussies who visited Singapore as a main destination. Today, it's something like almost 30% of Aussies visit Singapore as a main destination. So there's really enough and a lot to do in 4 to 5 days in Singapore.
And it was always about challenging those perceptions that Singapore was only good for not just chili crab, but more. Also Singapore sling, but so much more as well. And generally there was that misperception that Singapore was only good for a stopover. But there are many, many layers that we would love and have been challenging Australians to rethink Singapore.
Yeah, it's interesting, you brought out the Get Lost in Singapore campaign a while back, which I love because, I've been in the industry a long time, and I think when I first started in the industry, people used to go to Singapore to raffles, for a Singapore sling, or the traditional kangaroo route to fly Qantas through to London.
Yes.
And I think it's sort of remained that way for quite a long time. And then there's obviously a lot of new development going on in terms of the CBD moving out, but so that's created a whole new, different nightlife in terms of the area.
Yes.
But even that Marina
Bay area
and everything, it's
So I think there's so many more reasons to go there, and it's not just about the old world charm of raffles. And I really like that Get Lost campaign. Do you want to tell us a little bit what that did for the destination?
It was actually created and customized just for Australia, because of those misperceptions, and because Aussies have such a great tongue-in-cheek kind of quirky sense of humour. We decided to challenge in a funny way to say, get lost if you really think that Singapore is only so little, but also literally get lost and discover those and peel off those layers to see what Singapore can really offer.
And that's really kind of the best way to discover any destination, really, is to get lost in amongst the streets and the different buildings and travel with locals and get to discover that city sort of on a different level. And I'm just going to quickly run across to one of our viewers' questions here. So we've got a message from Laos Nicholson. Hi, thank you for sending through the message. Oh, sorry, it's just gone blank. There we go. We have been to the Hanging Gardens and Pool in the Sky. Yes, it's actually a really big tourist attraction, isn't it, in Singapore?
In the Marina Bay area. So he would be referring to that very beautiful view atop Marina Bay Sands, and across it, Gardens by the Bay. So Gardens by the Bay, if you can see some of the visuals behind as well, is a park literally in the middle of the city. And Singapore being a garden city, we have also created that city in a garden and garden in the city as well. And it's a wonderful attraction. It's a free park as well as ticketed for some parts. And although you've been there one time, you want to keep going back because Gardens by the Bay, in its flower domes, they do have different exhibitions all the time.
So I think the interesting thing about that is that you expect a garden to be in the open, but there are two domes there, and I mean that's the best thing, right? To visit a garden in an air-conditioned environment.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They really are.
So there are two different types of climates in there. And I think that gardens is quite amazing because there are those super trees, what you refer to as the hanging gardens. Right? And you can actually have dinner on top of one of the super trees, and at night there's a great light show.
Yeah, just maybe following on from that, we've got another question from one of our viewers. Melissa Harris asked, is there any good areas in Singapore that are family friendly? And now, obviously, the gardens are great, but I assume Sentosa would be a place you talk.
That's right. And just quickly on the gardens, within Gardens by the Bay, there is a children's garden, and it's a wonderful water park. And the best part about Singapore's humidity is that you always want to enjoy a nice cooling experience too. And that children and water just go hand in hand somehow.
They do.
So in the garden, in the park itself, there is a full locker and also showers. So for kids who get drenched, they can always simply change out. And you're right about Sentosa, Paul. There are a lot of family-friendly attractions. There is Universal Studios, for instance, in Singapore, and also recently opened Kidzania, which is have you heard of Kidsania?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little world for children to role play as adults. So that's pretty interesting, and for us, when we signed and inspected it, we loved it so much.
Wonderful.
It's funny, one of the places I really like is the aquarium out there. You know, there is just this massive pool. You're underneath, and some of the manta rays and so forth. So the kids love that sort of thing. Yep. And I think that, you know, really probably underlines that Singapore is a destination for anyone, you know, families, couples, retirees. You know, it's got a big cruise market in and out.
Girls shopping trip,
yeah,
foodies. And speaking of foodies, we've got Ruben De Silva has sent through a message saying hawker food experience a must. Totally agree with you. Yeah, get out there. I'm just going to quickly cross to back to you, Paul, about an offer that we have in Singapore at the moment. Now, this is just live on our website, so if you're not a member with Luxury Escapes, it's free to join. Please go to our website and sign up, and you're able to access all of our special offers as members do. And we've got, I believe, the Marriott. Yeah,
one of our great partners, the Marriott Group, the Marriott Tang Plaza, which is right in the heart of Singapore on Orchard Road, which is the main shopping street, right above the MRT. And the deal we're leading out with is 3 nights for $999 for 2 people.
Wow.
And that's normally valued up to $2,450. So it's a great value package, and really for 3 nights. We talked about how many, well, we actually haven't told anyone how many flights there are a day into Singapore, but there's so much capacity going to Singapore now that for a weekender, it's quite possible. It's an easy 7-hour flight, arriving on a Friday night, spend your 3 nights, weekend shopping, eating, whatever you need to do, and then come home again. And the Marriott Tang Plaza is a great property to do with that, and there's some really great benefits. It's live on our site now. The nice thing about it, and this is, we'll talk about this in a little while, is that it's actually valid with some surcharges over the Singapore Grand Prix, which is in, I think, October? September, missed by a month, but which is a great weekend, and so people who are looking to go up and see the Grand Prix, great location, and so there is a surcharge on that, but if you go to luxuryescapes.com, you'll find that deal live now.
Wonderful. Now, if we, I guess, go back to the beauty of so many options to discover in Singapore, what would be your must-do if you were talking to somebody about coming to Singapore for the first time?
Okay, that's difficult. So I think the ethnic districts, as I mentioned just now, right? The perception is always that it's a city. It is a city, but you know, within that city, that modernity, right? There's so much of the culture, the ethnic culture. I think the main place that people visit is Chinatown in terms of the ethnic district. And you know, in everywhere in Singapore, whether it's in the ethnic district or even in the CBD, it's always there's always a lot of food, right? Everything revolves around food. In Little India, the color, right? The range of Indian food. You know, a lot of times we think that Indian food is just one type of Indian food, but there's so many regional varieties of Indian food, right? Then the temples, the street markets, and all that. So I would suggest the ethnic districts to be one of the highlights for anybody visiting Singapore.
Yeah. Wonderful, and we've actually got a comment here from one of our viewers, Alyssa Emmy, I believe, loves to walk and go to the temples, and that's probably one of the beauties of going to that area, is that there are so many different temples that they can visit.
Right, and I would add on to say, even in Chinatown, just on one street, you can walk along 3 stretches and you will have an experience of a Muslim mosque, a Hindu temple, and a Chinese Buddhist temple, all on just one street. So it's really many cultures just in one stretch of Chinatown, and then across it, many restaurants and bars. So they become alive and give you a different experience, really.
And it's such a diverse city, really. Yes. You were saying earlier that you're 4th generation Singaporean, and I guess when I think of, or when I used to think of Singapore, I used to just think of it being a CBD hub where people went to work, but really it's actually so much more than that. Yeah,
and I think the interesting thing about Singapore is, you know, we always talk about cultures as Malay, Chinese, Indian, but in Singapore it's a mix. Right, so when you eat Chinese food in Singapore, it's not really Chinese food. It's Chinese food that has been influenced by Indian and Malay food.
A lot of fusion.
It's a lot of fusion. I think fusion is not new. For Singapore, fusion took place 150 years ago, right? When everybody mixed in a port city, that happens.
I think one thing when you look at Singapore, that, and I say the same thing about Melbourne, that there's actually not a bad place to eat in Singapore.
Yeah.
Because you do get a whole lot of diverse culinary experiences, because it's got that international flavour.
Yes.
And it is an international city.
Yes.
But it has the cultural aspects. It has the influence from, as you talk about, the Malay, the Indian, the Chinese, which really brings a flavour that's pretty unique, I think, anywhere in the world. And that's what I really like, going to Singapore and immersing yourself in some of that experience, because you just don't really find it anywhere else. So I think, if people are thinking about using Singapore as a stopover, great, but don't just stop over for one night. Even though the airport is a great airport, we'll talk about that in a little while.
It's a city in itself, really.
It is a city in itself. Get out and explore. And I think, we can only encourage people to do that.
There are so many different layers really to discover, and we've got, Lau says that the Singapore Zoo is a must. Now, I must admit, one of the first times I went to Singapore was a very long time ago, and I did the night safari through the zoo, and it was amazing. It was a fantastic experience. So for families or for adults even, it's just such a great experience.
We talked about being a garden city too. That's, I think, one of the things that you don't ever feel like you're in a big city. It's quite wide roads. It's easy to walk around. The public transport is fantastic. The taxis are cheap. So you're never really, 20 minutes from anywhere else, really, are you? And I think that, you can jam a lot into a few days in Singapore, which you may not do in other cities, because it's so close and compact.
So I think people say that it's easy to get lost in Singapore, and yet you don't get lost. Right? Because it's very convenient, the MRT or the train that brings you across the island and to all parts of Singapore. It's very, very easy to hop in and hop on and hop off.
So just on that, we've got a question from one of our viewers from Instagram asking what is the best form of transportation in Singapore? So you mentioned the MRT.
The MRT, yes.
Definitely.
The Mass Rapid Transit.
Yes. And it's such a great service.
Reasonably priced, right? Very, very clean, efficient, takes you anywhere on the island.
And it's air conditioned.
And it's air conditioned, and there's a lot of art within each of the stations also. Really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think obviously taxi services as well. Uber's there, so and so it's no trouble to get around in Singapore. And the one thing I will say that, when you normally go into Asia, you worry about the traffic. The traffic in Singapore is a dream. I don't think I've ever been.
Really?
I've never been caught in traffic in Singapore. Ever.
Okay.
No, seriously.
I'll disagree with you on that one. Maybe you just got lucky.
But with the MRT, so essentially it's like a Myki card with an EasyLink card. You can just get around both on the trains as well as on the buses. So it's convenient, and every 2-3 minutes the next train comes. So it's really relatively easy to get around. So probably no cars next time. Probably on the train.
I also think with Singapore, especially for those travellers who are first-time travellers to Asia, it's a really great introduction because it is probably the easiest country to travel in Asia in terms of everything's in English. Everybody speaks English. It's safe. It's clean. Great for families. Great for couples. Great for anybody,
the
really.
Singapore dollar is sort of on par with the Aussie dollar, so it's easy to understand. And on that, so Tanya Dixon's just put a note in that she's visiting Singapore in December. Have a great time, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Christmas in the tropics, December.
Yeah.
So that's a great festival there for Christmas. The whole of Orchard Road lights up. There's Christmas trees, there are events and all happening there. Also in the gardens, right? There's a show, Christmas Wonderland. Right? So December is a really good time to visit.
So if you could bust one myth here today for our viewers about, I guess, what the perception of Singapore is, what would you say?
I would say that actually Singapore is actually a lot greener than what a lot of people don't know. We actually have 62 islands, but we are most known for being a city-state. Maybe I'll share another hidden secret. It's called Pulau Ubin. So it's in the eastern side of Singapore. You take a little boat, a very short 15-minute ride. And when I brought an Australian visitor last year, when he got on, he's like, this does not look like Singapore at all. It's an island, you rent bicycles or you do a bit of hiking. And there are such options in Singapore as well. So I guess that myth to bust is that Singapore is just concrete skyscrapers.
It's great, actually. I think I might do that next time I'm in Singapore.
So the myth that I would like to bust is, you can't get Singapore noodles in Singapore. There's no such thing as Singapore noodles in Singapore. You can get loads of noodles, but it's not called Singapore noodles.
Wow. And is really a Singapore sling bad for you?
No, it's a good drink. I think it's a must-do for a lot of people, right? I guess it's just the ambience of going there, having the sling, sitting in the bar, and that's the only place in Singapore where you can litter legally, right? You can eat the peanuts and throw the shells on the floor, and you will not get fined.
But everywhere else, really, the country is so clean.
It's clean,
It's probably one of the things I actually do love about Singapore, in that you do feel that experience of being in Asia, but it is so clean, and I congratulate your country on being able to remain that way. It's fantastic.
Now, Elliot Wolf just said his wife and he are going to Singapore for 5 nights. Now, Elliot, if you jump on luxuriescapes.com, that Marriott Tang is available for 5 nights as well. The lead is 3, but you can do 5. So
great.
Jump on board and we'll look after you.
Do you just want to go through the inclusions for that offer again, Paul? Is that okay, or have I put you on the spot?
Oh, I've got to remember.
I love putting you on the spot.
Well, there's various options on it. So you have a 3 and 5 night package, including obviously many inclusions. I'm going to read it. So daily breakfast, executive lounge access, which is fantastic in the afternoon to sleep up and have a little cocktail or a cold beer after you've been out shopping or exploring the sites, and a 1 3-course dinner. So if that 3 nights, a really great value that you get pretty much everything you need in one package. So.
And like you said, it's in such a good location.
Great location.
You probably don't have to go very far at all if you don't have time.
To get to anywhere from the Marriott Tang Plaza is very simple. As I said, the MRT is underneath. Walk down Orchard Road to all the places we've mentioned previously. So very simple. Now the airport, which we did mention previously, is world renowned, and I think it's won the best airport the last 4 years in a row. Is that right?
I'm not surprised.
And it's a destination in its own right. So. It's got a pool on its roof,
it does.
which is amazing.
It does. It has a couple of gardens as well, and they also have movie screenings. So many times we joke with our Changi Airport colleagues that they are competing with us because there's no reason to step out of the airport. But yes, I totally agree with both of you, especially Paul. Do step out, and because there are a lot of good deals and airlines and fares that are available. So you always to visit Singapore, not just at the airport.
So it's a strange thing, but for Singapore, the airport is very dear to Singaporeans also. Right? It's actually a weekend destination for Singaporeans, right? Singaporeans actually go to the airport to eat and to shop there because there's so much to do. It used to be a place where Singapore students used to go and study also because they're nice quiet corners. Right? So it's very different from a lot of airports. A lot of airports are very functional, but the Changi Airport is actually one of the best destinations for Singaporeans actually to go to relax.
It's fascinating.
When you arrive, you actually feel like you're in a great country because it's just it's efficient, you're smooth. But but when you leave, also you go to the hawker markets in Custom, which is great.
And they're opening Terminal 4 this year. There's a new terminal.
Just on that, now we have 4 correct answers for how many places you can fly direct to Singapore out of Australia. So we need one more.
One more prize to go.
One more prize to go.
And we've got a question from one of our viewers. Richard Carrick asks, are there kids included in this deal, Paul?
It's for 2 adults only, unfortunately, this one.
Okay.
But keep an eye out. We've certainly got deals coming up all the time for family packages. We're looking at things in Sentosa soon. So keep an eye on luxuriescapes.com and we'll certainly be looking at those very shortly.
And we've got Laos again. Thank you for sending through your comments, Laos. My kids loved the butterfly garden at the Singapore airport. So obviously lots of things to do there. Wonderful. Now, I really quickly wanted to ask you, going back to something that's close to my heart other than food is shopping. So as a shopaholic, Singapore's a great destination to come and especially during the sales. So what would you say is the best time of year
So we have the Great Singapore Sale in the middle of the year, so from end May to July, so over 10 weeks. And then I think location-wise, in fact, where you guys have your promo right now, is also a shopping centre. And there are a lot of Singaporean local brands that are there. And for me, when I go anywhere at all, I always look for a local souvenir that would really be memorable to bring home. So there are a couple of really good Singaporean designers like Colate, like now I forget. Yeah. Extraordinary, couple of different ones. We'll send you some messages. Or visit our website where we can tell you more, which would be great. And Haji Lane, which is another Malay and Arab quarter, they have little small laneway shopping as well available. So beyond the Orchard Roads, there are also the small boutiques.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So sorry, just quickly for anyone who's still sending through your guesses, we've got more than 6 airports and we've got 1 prize left.
So the hint is there is more than 6 airports you can fly direct from, and I'll give you a hint, less than 15. So that's narrowed it down a little.
It's taken 5 off the original number. Wonderful. Okay, well, I think that we are going to wrap up the show. I'd like to thank you both for joining us and sharing a little bit about your amazing country with us.
Thank you for having us.
Great destination. Again, for everyone that's viewing at home, if you want to try Asia and you're a little bit unsure as to where to go, then definitely give Singapore a go. It's such different levels of culture and food and shopping and so much more than just a CBD, really.
I think it's important to understand that you can do it in 2 days or you can do it in 7. So there's something there for everyone. So I'd encourage absolutely to look at the campaigns that Luxury Escapes put on the our website. But if you're thinking of flying to anywhere, there's some great capacity, and there is 9. We've got the 5 winners now, so there's 9 airports you can fly out of Australia to. Let me see if I can go through them. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Cairns, Canberra is the one people most forget, Adelaide, Perth and Darwin. Did I get them all?
You got one more.
Darwin, Cairns.
I think I did count my fingers
You
right.
probably did count your fingers right.
So it's 9.
Gold Coast,
the Gold Coast, of course.
Yeah,
who can
sorry,
take the Gold Coast? Sorry, Gold Coast.
Wonderful. Well, for everyone that did send in the correct guesses, we'll be in touch with you and let you know how you can collect your $100 voucher. Again, thank you for joining us on Luxury Escapes, and we hope to catch up with you next time.
Thanks very much.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.